Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games. I am Harry, and before we go any further, please don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe to our channel if you're interested in some more board game related content. But for today, we have a review of this game right here, Merchants of Amsterdam, designed by Reiner Knizia and originally published by Rio Grande Games. This game is out of print, but I would like to share and discuss how this game plays and what are my thoughts and my personal feelings objectively and unobjectively, or I should say subjectively, with regards to this game. Let's set this game up and see how it plays first. So this is what the game looks like set up. Here we have the bank of money. Each player is assigned $400,000 or whatever the name of the currency is in the game. And this is basically what you're using to acquire and build your presence and auction and bid for your presence on the three different spheres of influence here in this world. And also, this is your final score at the end of the game. Whoever has the most money wins the game. Now, each player, this is a three-player game we have set up, has a startup location in each of the three different spheres. So first of all, here we have the shipping track. And the shipping track, as well as all the other spheres within the game, are divided into four different commodities. They're represented by four different commodities. We have sugar, we have gems, we have spice, and we have fabric. And each player has their own startup. Now, this here shows the ranking as to which commodity is intrinsically more valuable, which is relevant to how we score in the game. However, whenever that's only applicable when the commodities are tied. In other words, what really determines which commodity is the most valuable is which one has progressed the furthest, which one is the most advanced. So for example, if this track is the further advanced than the other tracks, then this will be counted as the most valuable track of the four, and it will score accordingly. Now, let's put everything back where it was. So we have this here. Then we have the four quadrants of the earth, the four corners of the earth, where you're trying to establish trade offices. And all of these little tokens here are used universally to represent your presence in the three different spheres. And here are what tokens look like. They're one-sided. They're not the best looking tokens. Even the side that's colored is not the prettiest of them all. And you're placing these along the way to represent your presence on the board. So you have the four different quadrants of the earth, your trade offices, and each of these spots also corresponds with one of the four commodities on the shipping track. And finally, you have Amsterdam, which is also divided in four, representing four districts. And each of these districts also has an intrinsic value, but the most valuable one will always be the one that's the furthest progressed, or the one with the biggest presence collectively among the players. Now, you have your four different tracks, your four different districts here, and none of these are necessarily corresponding to a commodity. But when you build there, you basically decide which commodity, or the cards that you use to build there let you know which commodity you're building. So that's it as far as those three spheres are concerned. Let's show you how the game is played. On a player's turn, they're going to draw from this deck of cards right here. They're going to draw three cards, one at a time, and one at a time they're going to make the tough decision of whether or not they want to keep the card for themselves by placing it on this dial right here, or whether or not they want to put it up for auction, by the way, an auction in which they can compete themselves as well, put it on top of this dial to represent that, and finally, which card they're going to discard, and they put it on top of this dial to indicate that. Now, the tough decision is that you have to make your choice one by one as you draw each card. You do not have foresight as to what's coming on further along, so you might be taking a risk gambling to see if you could draw a better card for yourself or for the auction. So let's see how this unfolds. So first of all, we drew this card right here, which is the sand timer. And the way the sand timer works is it makes you take this pawn right here, this little piece, and advance it along the time track that goes around the edge of the board. Now, each time you move further along the time track, not only are you bringing the game closer to its end, because the game ends when the time track finally ends up over here, but along the way, you're triggering certain events. For example, some of these spots allow players in turn order to progress on the shipping track, or to add another warehouse or warehouse on the districts of Amsterdam, or another trade office in one of the 4 quadrants of the earth. So it allows you to increase your influence in the world of trade. Finally, some of these spots also trigger disastrous events where you incur damage and lose influence or lose progress in one of these 3 different spheres of influence. And ultimately, you have a bunch of different spots that trigger scoring rounds in the individual tracks, whether it be the shipping, the warehouses in Amsterdam, or the trade offices in the 4 quadrants of the earth. By the way, the final round, the last event that's triggered, is a scoring round in which all 3 of these spheres will score. So let us see how this works here. Let's draw the next card. We've advanced 1 spot. Here we go. This is a card that allows you to advance 3 spaces on the shipping track. Now, according to the rules, you cannot advance all 3 spaces with any one track. So the most you can move in any given track is 2. So I will move over here 2 spots, and then finally I still have 1 remaining move out of the 3 on the shipping track. And what I could do with that 1 remaining move, as you can see, I don't have any other presence here. What I could do is I could place 1 on the starting position in any one of the other 3 tracks in which I don't have a presence. So I'm going to put it here on the number 1 here because it is valuable. There you go. All right, so I chose to keep that card myself. Let's draw the next card. All right, so this is a card in Amsterdam here. And here, this card in Amsterdam, it gives me a choice of one of 2 districts, but it must be a fabric commodity that I'm building, which means I will advance, or whoever wins this, because this is the one I'm actually going to choose to put up for auction, will advance 1 spot in the fabric shipping track. So I'm putting this up for auction. And then finally, the third card I must discard. And look what it was. This card indicates one of the 4 quadrants of the earth. In particular, it indicates the East Indies over here. And because it specifies the region, it leaves open to me what commodity I want. That's how these cards usually work. They either give you a choice in region and make it give you a particular commodity, or they give you an open-ended commodity choice but give you a particular region. And this one, for example, would have let me build any commodity trade office in the East Indies. So this card will be discarded. So finally, we're going to simulate what a auction would look like. We're going to bid for this card right here. And basically, you just wind this nice little auction timer here. You wind it all the way up to start, and then you click on it. And basically, whenever you're ready, whenever players are ready in a kind and respectful and gentle, as the rulebook mentions, fashion, you click on the spot where you're willing to pay. So here I stopped at 130, and because I stopped at 130, that means that I must pay $130 in order to win the right to this card. And if I do that, once I do that, again, I have my choice of 2 different regions. I will put this over here. And as you can see, there's a little bridge here. If I ever connect 2 warehouses over a bridge, I get a bonus in cash. So that's a very strategic move. And because this was a fabric commodity, I also am allowed to advance the track here on the shipping track on the fabric side of things 1 space forward. So now we're progressing the game a little further and seeing what a scoring round looks like. So now we've triggered a scoring round in the shipping track. And basically the way this works is we find out which is the most valuable of all the tracks, because all 4 tracks are going to score you money, but they're going to score you accordingly until to which one is the most valuable. So whichever track is the furthest advanced is going to count as the most valuable track. Any ties will be broken by this priority here, the 1, 2, 3, and the 4. So this track right here, which is the spice, is the furthest advanced. So it counts as the most valuable track. And because of that, whoever has the lead in that track is going to score a $100 bonus. So as you can see, the green player has the lead in that track, so they get 100,000. And then the second place player is going to get $60,000, and that would be the blue player in this case is going to get $60,000. Then we move on to the second highest rank here, which is a tie between these two, but again, priority goes here, number one. So this is going to be the second most, and that player, which is the blue, gets an $80,000 bonus right there. And then the second place player on this track, which is purple, will get a bonus of $40,000. All right. Then we go to the next track, which is this one. And that third place track, the leader in that track is going to get $60,000. That's the purple again. Will get $60,000. And then the second place player, again, this is blue, will get $40,000. Then finally, the least valuable track is this track right here. And then the green players in the lead here, they will get $40,000. And then second place goes to the blue, who will get $20,000. So that's how that works. Then, if we were scoring the Amsterdam regions, again, we have a presence here. And we would look for the most valuable district here. And the most valuable district will be the district that has the most warehouses. And right here, this district right here has 5 warehouses. So this would be the number one. Now, when you're looking for who has majority, you're looking for who has the largest cluster of warehouses. So for example, if blue would have had the most warehouses, but would have had them spread out and not necessarily forming a cluster, and a cluster consists of a group of warehouses that are orthogonally adjacent to one another. So here, the blue does have them orthogonally adjacent, and it has a cluster of 3. So even though he does have the majority, but on top of that, he has the biggest cluster of warehouses. So therefore, blue is in the lead in this category. And again, just like with the shipping track, the most valuable district here is going to score the leader in that district $100,000 bonus. Second place is going to get 60, and so on and so forth. It's the same numbers corresponding with the shipping. All the different spheres are going to score the same relationally speaking to each other. You look for the most valuable one. And again, if there's a tie, you break the tie by priority. Here you have numbers on top of each district, which lets you know which district has priority for the sake of tiebreakers. So it wouldn't matter in this case, because here this district is clearly number 2 because it has 4 regions, 4 warehouses. This one is clearly number 3 because it has 3 warehouses. And this one's clearly number 4 because it has 2 warehouses. Now, as you can see, you don't necessarily have to fight and claw to be in the lead in lots of areas. It's okay to be in the lead in just a few and try your best to be second in as many as possible, because ultimately that can get you a lot of money as well. Finally, you score the regions of the world in the same way. You would look for one of the quadrants that has the most warehouses present, and that would be here. This quadrant here of Africa has 5 warehouses present, so it would be the majority. These two each have 3. So to break the tie, you would look for the priority numbers over here, and the Americas is number 1. Go figure. So the Americas have the tiebreaker here as far as that. This one here has 4, so this would be the second most valuable. And then again, you will look for each of the tracks here, which tell you who scores for being primary representative in that area and who scores for being the secondary representative in that area. You keep on playing this game, going through all these rounds, factoring in the probabilities of when a scoring round is going to be triggered, because you always have an idea that when the next sand timer gets drawn, you're going to advance in that time track and a scoring round will be triggering, and setting yourself up as well as possible to do well when those scoring rounds are triggered. And that's pretty much the gist of the game. You keep on going over and over until finally the time track runs out. The deck is built and constructed so that basically you will play through almost everything and then finally advance towards the end there by the end of the game. So that's pretty much it for the gameplay of Merchants in Amsterdam. Let's check out what my final thoughts on the game are. So that in a nutshell is Merchants of Amsterdam. This game, as I mentioned earlier, is out of print. I think there are ways of getting it, through the secondhand market, through the geek market on BoardGameGeek.com, and so on and so forth. My copy is not for sale. I am very much a fan of this game. This game is actually ranked in my top 50 games of all time. If you're curious to see where it ranks in my top 50 or some of my other top 50 games, click on the link down below. But as for Merchants of Amsterdam, I am about to give it some very objective grades. As I mentioned, it's a game I really like already, and because of that, it ranks in my top 50. But I do want to be objective and share my critiques about the game and how I feel people at large would respond to this game and whether or not they would like it. So, first of all, let's talk about components. As you guys saw, the components in this game, they are what they are, and they are pretty bad. I mean, first of all, I think even by 2000, the year 2000 standards, I still feel like the components are pretty bad. The artwork is pretty bad. There's not much aesthetic appeal to this game. The cover looks as boring as it gets. The game board looks bad. The cards are whatever. The little chits that they use to represent your presence on the different spheres of the board, whether it be the shipping track or the trade offices in the 4 sectors of the world, or the warehouses in the 4 districts of Amsterdam. All of those, they're ugly cardboard. They're very thin, right, and chintzy, and also on top of it all, they're single-sided, right? They're not even double-sided chits. So one side is just white. It's terrible. The color choices, it's not even the best colors, the best form of blue or the best form of green or the best form of orange. It's a really, really ugly looking game, to say the least. The one saving grace component wise is that nice little auction timer. I don't know what's the official terminology for that, but that's the one saving grace, and it's not eye-opening or pretty per se. It's just cool. You're like, oh, this is a fun little gadget, a fun little gimmick, but other than that, there is no saving grace to it. So I would have to give this an F for components. Then we could talk about thematic integration with the mechanisms of the game. I don't feel it. This is a typical Reiner Knizia game where theme is not necessarily a strong suit. You are merchants of Amsterdam, and you're trying to, be the most successful merchant in the land, so to speak. And, with the discovery of the new world, you're trying to broaden your horizons and extend your influence to the 4 sectors of the world. And you're using shipping lines to bring your goods to different places. You don't really feel it too much. I guess to some extent you could feel it. They do have some paper money for those who do like paper money. I know that's a controversial topic, very polarizing topic. But, I honestly can't really give this a great grade for theming. I myself can overlook theming to some extent, which is why I will give this a D for theme. Then we could talk about the actual gameplay. For me, I find the gameplay to be a positive. I like auction bidding games. If you don't like auction bidding games, you probably are not going to like this, right? Because there's nothing much else going on than the auction bidding. There's that simple mechanism, at the beginning of the game of when you draft the 3 cards one by one and one by one decide what you're going to do with them. That's pretty much the only other twist to this game. But I do like that. Herbaceous, later on, a more recent modern game, kind of borrowed that idea. Very simple, but at the same time very tense. And I appreciate those kind of mechanisms. The ones that are so subtle, you're like, why didn't I come up with that? But at the same time, they add to the challenges of the game, right? So I appreciate that. The auctioning is interesting because of the little auction timer that you're hitting to try to time it just right. So with all those things, and I like the fact that there are, area majority for me area control, area majority is a really cool mechanism. It's one of my most liked mechanisms. So again, if you like area majority and auctioning, I think the gameplay will suit you. If you don't, then you just don't like those mechanisms, and there's nothing this game can do, right? It's not reinventing the wheel necessarily or changing things up too much. But I'm going to say that for gameplay, I will give this a B+, a solid B+. And then finally, I have the novelty factor. How new was this in particular when it came out back in 2000? And I'm going to say, I'm actually going to give this an A-, right? I'm not factoring in it now, you know, with thousands upon thousands of games that have come and have built upon the shoulders of El Grande and some of these other earlier area majority games. But factoring in that this came out in the year 2000, just about 5 years removed from El Grande, and just considering that there weren't as many area majority games back then, and just the idea of, you know, Reiner Knizia implementing area majority not only in different regions as is done in El Grande, but different spheres, right? And I use that, you know, word to represent the fact that there's 3 different aspects of the game, or 3 different realms of the game, where within each of those realms or those spheres, you have different categories that you're trying to have the area majority in, right? So it kind of feels like 3 games in one at the same time, and you're kind of picking and choosing which game do you want to win in, right? And if you really focus on one, you have a really good chance of winning that one area, that one sphere. But you still have the other 2 spheres that you don't want to do too bad in, because if you do at least kind of good in them, that success combined with the success in the one area that you focused on will give you a good chance of winning the game. So I like that idea. I like the fact that he just kind of like combined all these different spheres into one whole of a game, and he makes it work, right? And they kind of piggyback off one another. So I like that. I appreciate that. And again, I think for that time, for the year 2000, I think he was able to interweave all these things together very smoothly, very elegantly, very streamlined manner. And again, for me, factoring in back in the year 2000, I'm gonna have to give that part of it an A-. So those things lead me to the conclusion of giving this an overall grade of B-. Now, how did it work its way up all the way to B- when the components got an F? Because I honestly have to say, while I do love good components, I love them, right? Who doesn't love a good component? I just cannot give as much weight to that as some of the other categories. So because of that, I bumped it up to a B-. And also just factoring in that it is the year 2000, and that if this game were to get reprinted, fingers crossed, if it were to get reprinted, it would by default automatically have better components than this. And very likely, because of all the progress in, you know, technology and in the industry in the last 20 years as a 20-year-old game, very likely it might even have really, really, really good components. You combine that with the gameplay, and this game, I think, would be a great game to try. You know, obscure game, a game that nobody talks about, one of Reiner Knizia's most overlooked games, but a game that ever since the first time I played it, I appreciated it and still appreciate it till this day. So that is my grade for Merchants of Amsterdam. That is my review for Merchants of Amsterdam. Thank you so much for taking out some time to watch us here when Harry met board games, and I hope you continue liking and watching what we have here on this channel. Don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.